Oh yeah, I have found my favorite Skyrim combat mod mixture with the help of a certain core mod. Sadly, this core mod is a very love-hate relationship for me. Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 in the Skyrim Modding Melee series. This time, I'll be highlighting two mixtures with a couple of different core combat mods. The two mixtures are Inpa Sekiro Combat and Ultimate Combat, and then we have Inpa Sekiro Combat and various animation mods. These will be mods that actually change the mechanics of Skyrim's combat by quite a bit. I decided not to cover combat gameplay overhaul as it is too restrictive in allowing other animation mods to be used. And because attack behavior revamp is based on CGO and requires it, that sadly eliminated ABR for me too. Now, I'm not saying these mods are bad. In fact, a ton of people love them, but I'm looking for some core combat mods that will play nice with other animation mods. Sky SE is fairly restrictive as well, but at least there are a lot of mod add-ons available for it to change up animations to your liking. However, I just did not really like that it removed the directional power attacks, and I also encountered some animation bugs where my character's upper body animations didn't properly match the lower body animations, and it just looked wonky. That's not to say it's not a good mod. In fact, if you think those things don't bother you, then you should most definitely try out the mod, as tons of people swear by it. Like last time, what I'm going to do is to briefly cover the core mods of the mixtures, listing some of their main features, and then I'll provide a showcase of all the mods working together so you can know what to expect if you run the same combinations. So let's get started. This mixture uses Inpa Sekiro Combat and Ultimate Combat together.
So much easier to rob when you're dead.
Belongs to the north.
Wait, count out your coin. I'll kill you.
Watch it! What are you doing? You're outmatched. Get the
Won't
witch.
sleep.
Ultimate Combat is a big combat overhaul, with lots of features that add a lot of depth to combat. It adds unique features like special attacks for specific enemies. It also adds new behaviors to the vanilla AI, like when some enemies are wounded, they will retreat to the safety of any nearby allies. Other features that round out the package include location damage, adding dodging to NPCs, sword swinging effects, and various other combat and AI tweaks. It also has an MCM menu that lets you customize a lot of the features of the mod. Inpa Sekiro Combat might just be my favorite of all the combat mods for Skyrim. I fucking love it, but I also hate it. It's so close to being perfect, but has some annoying features and behaviors that make me want to kick my computer out of the window. So Inpa Combat overhauls the mechanics of the vanilla combat to make it closer to the combat from Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. First, I'll try to cover the big changes that the mod makes. The most obvious change made by the mod is that it adds a poise and posture system for blocking. A timed block will negate most damage, keeps your stamina up, and causes stamina/poise damage to enemies. It completely replaces the vanilla stamina with posture. Posture acts similar to Skyrim stamina and gives the player the capacity to block and deflect attacks. Once your or an enemy's stamina reaches 0, the player or enemy become vulnerable. For the poise system, if the player is hit by any attack, including arrows or magic, the player is unconditionally staggered. To avoid the stagger, you must defend yourself by blocking or dodging. The mod is supposed to have a type of failsafe to avoid stun locks, but in my experience, I still ended up in many situations where I was essentially stun locked. I'll talk more about that shortly. The enemy also has its own poise value. If a certain amount of poise is accumulated from constant attacks, the enemy will become staggered. Most attacks can be blocked, including an option for arrows and magic. Stamina/posture decreases when defending against melee attacks or arrows. If a block is successful, then the player does not take any health or stamina damage. You also have an option to be able to block magic, and yet another option to be able to reflect magic back on a successful block. Your stamina/posture replenishes while you block, and the recovery rate depends on your current health. The higher your health, the faster you recover posture. There is also a new bashing system in place. Bashing now consumes less stamina/posture, but you'll need to use it more strategically, as using a bash while your posture is low, you will be the one to be knocked back by the bash. Humanoid enemies now have a new attack called the Perilous attack. This is an attack that cannot be defended against or parried, but is clearly telegraphed with a tell that appears as a red icon above the target's head. You either have to dodge this attack or perform a bash as soon as you see its tell. Getting hit with this perilous attack will cause a big stagger and big loss of health. If you parry an enemy's quick attack 3 times in a row, you can stop the enemy's attack and cause stagger. When an enemy's posture is depleted, their posture is considered broken. At this time, a red circle icon appears at the center of their body, indicating a vulnerable state. When attacking an enemy in this state, you will perform a kill move. The mod has a resurrection system that can be altered in the MCM menu. Obviously, humanoid enemies can parry attacks as well, and when an enemy parries an attack, that enemy counterattacks and enters a state of stagger immunity for a certain period of time. There is also an option in the MCM menu to allow for enemies to parry arrows and magic. So, overall, this is a fantastic mod. It gives you tactical combat and makes the combat much harder. It makes facing several enemies at once scary. In fact, it makes you want to bring companions along so that you don't get overwhelmed. I found that taking on 2 enemies at once was manageable, but more than that and it got to be too hard. And a couple of archers in the distance can be an utter nightmare. At first, I didn't think I liked the constant clanging sound and the overabundant shower of sparks from blocked strikes. But as I've gotten used to the mod, I actually like them now, as they are a sign that I've properly blocked. And now I find the mod sound and spark effects incredibly satisfying. Now, on to some of the bad things about the mod. Because as great as it is also hampered by issues and features that are so very frustrating. It seems to me that with this mod, stamina reduction perks do not work, and the block tree is pretty much made useless. The heavy armor stagger reduction and immunity perks do not work either. What I'd like to see is that the mod alter these perks to fit the new system. The mod also has its own death system, so if you want to run any of your own death overhaul mods, you'll need to run an Inpa child mod called Patch for Death Mods. Another issue that really bugged me is that you cannot use Impa with Immersive HUD to have the HUD disappear when out of combat. Or maybe you can, but I was unable to figure out how. I'd love to see this fixed, as I enjoy to have the HUD disappear when exploring for the immersion factor. Now we're getting down to the 2 biggest issues I found with the mod. Stun locks are way too severe. Arrow stun lock is a very common thing, and because of that, I'd recommend that you run some mods to make enemy archers less accurate and do less damage. And finally, let's talk about the script lag. There were definitely a lot of times when I experienced lag between me pressing my button to block and the block actually happening. And because of that, I got hit a lot of times when I should not have gotten hit. This can sometimes be downright frustrating. So ultimately, I'm very torn on this mod. I absolutely love so much of it, but some of those issues are huge issues for me personally. You will have to decide on your own if you can live with them or not. If you're not running a script-heavy load order, you may be just fine, and I fully say to at least try the mod to see if it fits you or not. But if you are running script-heavy, this mod may very well give you problems. Myself, I'm still trying to figure out if there are any script mods I can do without in my load order so I can run Impa. As far as the combination of Impa Sekiro combat and Ultimate combat, I found it quite enjoyable. But I had to drop Ultimate combat because I ran into issues where I'd still have a weapon in my hand after putting the weapon away. Sadly, I could not find a way to fix that.
Huh? Time to end this little game. Victory or Sovngarde! You start running.
For this mixture, I'm dropping Ultimate Combat and filling that gap by using a handful of other animations and combat tweak mods. This mixture was the one that sold me. I really like playing with it. Combining Impa with melee power knockback, the ultimate dodge mod, dual wheel parrying, and low Z-Lock's lock-on feature really made a refreshing change to the combat and allowed me to have the extra new animations that I love so much. The only negatives were Impa's habit of stun locking me and its script lag. But those are huge problems for me personally. If I can cut out some of the scripted mods that I run, then maybe I can get the script lag better under control. But I just don't know if I want to give up any of those mods that I'm already using. Decisions, right?
You picked a bad time to get lost. Go ahead, try and fight back. You puny weakling.
Now we are at the end of another episode. If you use any of these mods, please be sure to thank the mod authors with endorsements and donations if you can. They devote tons of their free time to help keep us entertained.